What is up, YouTube? This is your host, Rainy B, here to spill that homicidal tea. And the blend of tea for this video, overconfident piece of shit blend of tea. It sounds delicious.
Oh, this coffee smells like shit.
It is shit, Austin.
It's a bit nutty.
Please, after you watch this video, if you like it, give it a like. And if you don't, then give it a dislike. I mean, either way, I'm good. Let's go ahead and get to the case. The solved case of the Suitcase killer. Also known as the story of the cases of Summer Baldwin and Joanna Rogers. On September 13, 2005, a Lubbock area landfill worker was going about his duties when he came across something odd. It was a suitcase. Not totally out of the norm, but it seemed a little bit too clean to be in the landfill. It piqued his curiosity, so he decided to investigate a little further. He opened it and he saw arms and legs. Now, the landfill worker, he originally mistook it for a practical joke or some prop actor's old suitcase containing mannequin parts and stuff. Researching this, I've actually found that mannequins are apparently quite common in the landfills, especially around college towns like this. But the worker initially dismissed it as another university kid prank, but when the smell hit him, he realized that his discovery was far from amusing. When he opened the zipper, he found a young woman's body, clearly mortally wounded, folded up and placed inside the rolling suitcase and thrown amongst the trash like garbage from one of the garbage trucks on its daily pickup and disposal route. The worker informed his supervisor, who phoned the police. The landfill was promptly shut down. It was now a crime scene, and it prevented anyone from further contaminating this potential crime scene. Now, despite the difficulty of finding forensic evidence in a trash dump, the investigators were able to rapidly determine that the unnamed woman had been deceased for less than 3 days, and she'd actually most likely been placed in that suitcase within the last 48 hours, so that's just always great. First 48, remember. A medical examiner uncovered horrifying details about the body's condition. She had defensive wounds all over her body, and she had been badly beaten, and she died of manual asphyxiation as far as they could tell without a further examination. The medical examiner also discovered a tattoo on the woman's wrist with a simple flowing script that said Summer. The medical examiner also discovered that the young woman was roughly 5 weeks pregnant. Adding to the sadness of her death, the police finally had a name for their Jane Doe after they ran her fingerprints through the database. Summer Baldwin. After obtaining a name, the authorities traced down the victim's family and discovered that her parents, they resided in Roswell, New Mexico. That's roughly about 170 miles from Lubbock. Following the devastating news of their daughter's death, the police did everything they could to obtain any information they could about Summer in hopes of uncovering clues concerning her life and death. Summer's parents steered detectives back to Lubbock, and Summer's Aunt Terry, who revealed that Summer had only been in Lubbock for 3 or 4 days before she vanished. The early pregnancy also alerted authorities of the possibility of a father, allowing them to quickly formulate some suspects in the murder. Summer's family in New Mexico mentioned a girl that she was hanging out with. Her name was Margie Estrada, and it was a friend of Summer's. They quickly tracked her down and questioned Summer's best friend, Margie, but she was inconsolable, and she couldn't give the investigators anything except for a name: Summer's ex-boyfriend, LaQuincy Freeman. The police discovered that Freeman and Summer's relationship had been rocky at best. Everyone who knew the couple said that they were prone to loud and explosive verbal confrontations, but no one had ever seen them get physically violent with each other. So, the police were able to track down Freeman and interrogate him about Summer's death. And during the interrogation, he was said to be unusually calm, although he did admit that him and Summer, they'd broken up for a while, and they'd moved on. It just wasn't a whole lot of love or hate still there. It just was complacency, they were just done. The cops they were still suspicious, but they didn't have any strong evidence. So they just suggested that Freeman take a lie detector test. He did, and he breezed through it. Showed absolutely zero signs of deceit in his responses. Now, due to a lack of evidence, the authorities released Freeman and resumed their investigation. The investigation slowed for a while, and the cops attempted to find a new lead. However, Margie Estrada approached the police within a few weeks with new facts that she hadn't remembered in her moment of grief. Estrada recalled seeing Summer in a 7-Eleven convenience store in September, around September 11th, accompanied by a man that Margie had never seen before. This mystery man was described as a light-skinned Hispanic with a clean cut, looked kind of military-esque. And he'd left with Summer in what Estrada suspected was the man's vehicle, a red pickup truck. Now, encouraged by this new lead, police went to that 7-Eleven that she had mentioned and requested to check the surveillance tapes. While the detectives were unable to confirm that Summer was present or identify any of the faces, they did notice a red pickup truck drive up to the business at around 11:30 p.m., which they identified as a Dodge Ram. I mean, a truck and a vague description, those aren't enough to find a suspect, so investigators resorted back to the luggage, which was the only other piece of hard evidence they had. The suitcase's most striking feature was that despite containing a decomposing young woman and being dumped in a landfill in September, it was astonishingly clean, leading investigators to think that it may have been purchased recently. The authorities were fortunate enough to discover a UPC code still intact on the interior of the suitcase. The investigators were able to trace down the retailer that sold that case to Walmart. They used that using the code from that inside of it. It's crazy. There were only 2 Walmarts at the time in Lubbock in that time. So the cops, they called both locations and they said, you sell any of this? You sell any of this? Well, they discovered that the exact luggage in question had only been purchased twice in recent weeks. One in the afternoon and the other at 3 a.m. The first transaction was followed up and found to be a woman who showed them the suitcase, so she was ruled out, leaving only the late night purchaser to be tracked down by investigators. Now, they uncombed this CCTV footage where the Walmart where 3 a.m. purchase was made. Like, I'm going to interrupt myself. Okay, that reminds me, at work, I had to go through security footage to see one of our semis got damaged and just to see who was responsible for it in my company or a delivery, truck company driving through. And it is so freaking A boring. Like, I was going at 4 times speed, which sounds really fast, but no. It's every 4 seconds. It still sucks. In that tiny frame, just this 4 speed, it caused me to miss a guy employed by my company, unfortunately, that, tore ass into the forklift and slammed in it. And I also watched him tear ass away. We got to pop him. But anyway, I had to rewatch that whole morning all over again in real time, and it takes forever. I mean, it's crazy how 1 or 2 seconds is all you have to see someone on CCTV do something. So these poor cops, I mean, good for them for being so patient.
Shut the fuck up. No one cares.
That's so rude. Anyway, sorry, went off on a tangent there.
Just like a woman.
Really? Anyway, cops poured through the CCTV footage and they found the suitcase being purchased, but the video quality didn't provide any new, at least solid evidence. All they could tell was that the buyer was most likely a Hispanic male, military-style hairstyle. It wouldn't be enough for police to go on, so continuing watching the camera footage, police wanted to link the person to the red truck using the outside CCTV footage. But all they saw was a Hispanic man pulling a rolling luggage bag toward a dark-colored, unidentified truck, because it was black and white. The detectives were unable to identify the truck as it left the parking lot. So no matter how many times they watched that video, it wasn't to be. Unless all was not lost, because the police backed the footage up to when the man entered the parking lot. Boom. Color camera, different part of the parking lot. Yeah. Well, on that different camera, it showed a lot more detail. And there it was. Large red Ram pickup entering the parking lot. Hispanic man exiting his truck to enter the store around 3 a.m. Then they rewatched the video following the movements of that one individual in the green striped shirt throughout the store. He bought the suitcase and latex gloves. He then went to the checkout and then paid with wait for it, debit card. You can't make this crap up.
Are you stupid or what?
Police moved rapidly to identify and apprehend this individual. With their new knowledge, knowing this perp had used a debit card, sealed their ability, what an idiot, sealed their ability to get a search warrant for Walmart to turn over their financial records from that early evening, morning, whatever, in the middle of the night. They quickly got a search warrant for the bank the debit card was linked to in order to identify the account's owner. The police finally came up with a name, Rosendo Rodriguez III. Yes, the third. Old Rosendo Sr. and Jr. are just so proud of their boy, Rosie. Apart from the name of their assailant, the bank account and the transactions revealed 2 additional facts. Rodriguez's permanent address, that was in San Antonio, Texas, approximately 400 miles away from Lubbock. Further review of the movements of his debit card found that it was used to make another purchase on the very day Summer died, at the same 7-Eleven where Summer had last been seen. This combined with the truck's camera footage, CCTV footage revealed Rodriguez, he was in the general region of Summer's last known position that day she was murdered. Probable cause? Rodriguez's association with the U.S. military was the most startling piece of information that the police discovered about him. Rodriguez was a reservist in the U.S. Marine Corps, and his reservist unit was headquartered in Lubbock, further cementing his connection to this case. When the police contacted the reserve unit, they learned that Rodriguez didn't stay on base for his necessary training, but instead chose to stay at a Holiday Inn Civic Center. Another nail in the coffin for old Triple Rosie. That particular Holiday Inn, guess what? Across the street from that 7-Eleven.
What?
Dumb. By the time the investigators arrived at the hotel, Rodriguez, he'd already left that Holiday Inn, but they were given access to his room. It had been cleaned, sort of. During their search, the forensic team discovered a patch of dried blood, a Walmart bag, and a pair of latex gloves. Bang up job from that cleaning crew, eh? Well, this together with all the other evidence gathered thus far was all the evidence that the cops needed. And they went down to San Antonio to apprehend Rosendo Rodriguez III. Now, Rodriguez, he was surprisingly simple to track down. He was apprehended by police at his mother's home in San Antonio. Didn't even seem too shocked when officers stood on his front door. When he was apprehended without incident. Once he started being questioned, he told the cops his version of his harrowing ordeal that he nearly did not escape from. Rodriguez claims that him and Summer met up with the intention of returning to his hotel room and having consensual bon chicka. But during their time together, they got into an argument. Apparently something to do with crack. Different sources say what, but I'm not going to make Summer exist as a crackhead. So I'm going to say it was Rosendo with the crack. How's that? Anyway. Says that Summer got really pissed, according to Rodriguez, and drew a knife on him. Now, Summer was put in a chokehold by Rodriguez in self-defense. He's super trained and everything. Well, he continued to hold her neck until she was no longer struggling and fell limp. I don't know if they teach you that much, but anyway. When questioned about the bloodstain, he explained it. Summer, she had a nosebleed. I mean, the way that these guys have all this just so happened to them. It's amazing. It's incredibly coincidental.
There's no need for excuses. There's no need for problems. I've heard he's had the flu. I heard he broke his hand. I heard he was having problems or whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Now, this is a trigger warning for you guys that are more sensitive, and especially when it comes to sexual assault and like injuries from such. It's the medical examiner's take on things after they've done the full autopsy, and it's pretty bad. So click here to avoid all that stuff, and I'll see you back in a minute. And if not, then just be warned. I mean, this isn't pretty, especially if you guys knew Summer or were family or friends with her. Don't listen to this, because you probably have already heard it. You don't need to relive this. So just click here, and I'll see you in a little bit. Unfortunately for this idiot, the medical examiner's findings contradicted his medical claims of injuring her by self-defense tactics. And also, she didn't have a nosebleed. The forensic evidence contradicted his claim of self-defense by the crime scene reenactments versus the injuries that she sustained. There was something else that the medical examiner found that was shocking. More shocking than the 70 blunt force injuries sustained by the victim, including injuries to her back, her stomach, her legs, her face, her head. She had been violated violently in the front and the rear of her organs. Those cavities being so violently assaulted, they sustained both deep blunt force injuries and also extreme wounds and cutting and lacerations. She had been assaulted that way badly enough to lose consciousness in that attack. Oh God, I'm tearing up. I did not expect this. Oh my God. But there was no damage that would have killed her. The doctor that performed the autopsy, his name is Dr. Naradajan, the pathologist. He concluded that Summer died of positional asphyxiation as a result of the way she was placed in the suitcase. She, in other words, was conscious when she was placed in the suitcase. Obviously, the testimony disproved the defendant's claim of self-defense, especially since he only had one little scratch on his entire body. So welcome back, all you old folks that skipped ahead. We use the definition of person from the penal code in the second paragraph, which includes an unborn child at every stage of gestation from conception to birth, as well as a couple of notable cases on transferred intent. Norris versus Stade was a case of the Court of Criminal Appeals for the best example, defining when life begins. The conclusion is simple. You're in the wrong business if you can't argue these facts. Now, that's all quotes from Todd Smith. It was a primary investigator on this case who, he can compete with the best of them. With his PowerPoint presentations and everything, he developed some fantastic concluding presentations for the jury. Everyone was scared to touch the luggage because of how filthy it was and where it had been. He grabbed it and said that we're all going to be terrified of getting our hands or our suits dirty, and that this bag, and he held up the bag in court, was meant to be Summer Baldwin's resting place, her ultimate resting place. Summer's coffin, this luggage. And he placed 3 roses on top of it. One was for Summer, one was for her unborn child, and one was for Joanna, a victim that the jury never even heard about. Now, at this point, the majority of the jury was already in tears, displaying more emotion than the defendant ever did. Rodriguez was, like I said, charged with this murder and everything by the police. But before they went to trial, the investigators, they had search warrants for everything. And I mean everything. Computers, phones, email, chat accounts, search history, banking, social media, credit cards, you name it. Any digital footprint that old boy left, the detectives now had access to. Phone records using triangulation of the cell phone signals, they bouncing off of satellites, and then like from the phone to the satellite down to the ground. I mean, they can use that to draw a circle to see where someone's been. It indicated that the hours after disposing the body, Rodriguez was on a bus home. Further research showed that Rodriguez, he took a photo of himself and sent it to his girlfriend saying, "So cute, might delete later. I'm on my way back home, boo." Anyway, forensic testing, it quickly came back. And on the outside of the gloves, found in the garbage of the hotel, Summer Baldwin's blood. On the inside of the gloves, Summer's DNA, again, this time mixed with Rodriguez's. Sweat is a motherfucker. DNA tested also matched DNA taken from Summer's sexual assault kit, and boom. Then they had the task of going through his computer. Tex found that it seemed like old Rosie was into meeting chicks online. His internet search history appeared to also show that as soon as he got back to his parents' home, he Googled Summer's name. But it didn't stop there. There was another name that he searched repeatedly. Joanna Rogers. Now, when Lubbock police detectives, they heard that name, their hearts sank. See, Joanna Rogers, her case was a separate case that they had been working on for a while. It was just a missing persons case, though. I mean, there was no evidence of an intruder at this 16-year-old girl's house. And her parents didn't hear anything that night either. So at the time of her disappearance, police and volunteers conducted a search, but nothing came up. Rodriguez's computer also revealed that he had been in contact with Joanna before she disappeared through online chat rooms, and Joanna's phone records came back with Rosie's number all over it. Investigators theorized that Joanna may have suffered the same fate as Summers. They went back to the defendant and asked him for some clarity on the possible involvement with the Joanna Rogers case. The DA told Rodriguez's attorney if the defendant had anything to do with Joanna Rogers, her disappearance, and they could find her, the state would offer him a life sentence, and that would be for the Summer Baldwin case, and waive the death penalty. This decision, it's to make a deal with the devil. It came with the approval from the families, both families. Well, the move worked. Rosendo, he agreed to the deal and told the detectives how he met Joanna Rogers in the early morning of May 4th, 2004. He said that it was for consensual sex, no big deal. That after Joanna started getting mouthy and wanting money, he choked her to death. And then he casually went up to his room, found a suitcase, stuffed Joanna inside it, and threw it in the dumpster. It was like he was telling scores to a high school game that you never heard of. Just passing information, silence, filling in conversation at a party where you really don't know anybody and nobody's that enthused. He's like, just didn't care. The plea bargain, though, it was the only way that they were able to find out what really happened to Joanna. And the hard part was just beginning. They needed to get Joanna home to her family. Unbelievably, the landfill maintains some quite accurate records of where waste is taken. They have grids and dates and depths and all that they must follow. There's a whole insane science that is mad interesting. I mean, I went down a rabbit hole on, oh my God. And I did this whole how's it made type documentary on landfills. I mean, ooh, I cannot wait until I can get sponsorships, because Magellan, that documentary channel, holy crap, it is wicked, crazy, awesome. All sorts of cranial stimulation. It's really cool. Detectives, they investigated that dumpster where Joanna's remains would have been found. Well, armed with that information, they went to the dumpster's address, and then they went to the landfill and got the general location from landfill officials where that trash would have been dumped. The issue is that we're talking about a space that covered 2 years worth of trash and stretched the length of several football fields. I mean, now if you are my people overseas, I'm going to make this even more fun. That's 300 yards. What's a yard? It's 3 feet. What's a foot? 12 inches instead of 10. Look it up if you don't know how far that is. Anyway, this was a proverbial needle in a haystack to discover Joanna Rogers' body. And the investigators, they lost hope. Now, Pamela Alexander, an incredible and selfless victims advocate, along with the help of Sheriff David Gutierrez, were successful in obtaining a $100,000 grant from the governor's office to assist in the expense of searching the dump site. The people that volunteered, they put themselves in the crosshairs of bacterial hazards and viral dangers. I mean, that wind, all the animal waste, scavengers actively looking for food, and the actual rotting food and refuse directly. The biohazards, they're extreme, and they endured temperatures of above 100 degrees. They searched for this young woman in that setting wearing hazmat suits. I mean, these people, true heroes in the investigation. I mean, those are actual words from the district attorney's office. The searchers were in the final landfill pocket to search when they ran out of money. They needed equipment, they needed data housing, they needed to get paid for what they were doing. I mean, around 2 months into this search, they were having meetings saying that how long can this really go on? I mean, the search was on the verge of being suspended. The team that was out there just didn't know it yet. The higher-ups, they were holding meetings saying that they couldn't waste the teams anymore. The time from the investigators, they needed them on other cases, and they needed their attention. So then, as it sometimes goes, light appeared, and the heavens broke open for the search team. They found another black suitcase containing Joanna Rogers, a girl with striking, beautiful red hair even after death. That is what stuck out the most. They found her. The detectives, they got the honor of taking her home 934 days after she had gone missing. The prosecutor's office was relieved to get the Rogers family to bury their daughter. I mean, losing a child, it's got to be unreal enough. But the actual uncertainty about what transpired or their whereabouts, It's got to be intolerable. So after that, there was just one thing left to do: officially plead the defendant. Defense attorneys, though, they admitted that to the prosecution that they weren't certain if that would occur on the day of the defendant's plea agreement, because the prosecutors offered Rodriguez a plea agreement in which he might avoid the death penalty if he admitted to the murders of both women. But Rodriguez oddly declined at the last minute. See, our buddy Rosie Rodriguez, he was a brilliant Marine. He had a college education, so his defense was, are you ready? I don't understand what's going on. What do you mean? Huh? What? That was it. He refused to plead out.
Are you stupid or what?
That's one way to really piss off the prosecutor's office. I mean, like, they were trying to do you a solid, dude. Bitch, this ain't no game. To Matt Powell, the criminal district attorney in Lubbock, that was it. Every wager off. On that day, Matt retracted every offer and submitted notice of intent to pursue the death penalty. Woo! That same afternoon. That is one thing that I've picked up from the first 48. Maybe being an empath is what really drew me to that program. But these detectives, they get invested. They get to know these victims. They get to know their families. They have that adrenaline rush. I mean, I'm sure it's awesome to chase these guys and finally get them. But when the work begins is actually when they get caught. And then you have someone's life in your hands. You have to build... You got to be damn sure that you're going to build a good case. And you better be damn sure that you have the right man, Ray Crone. So in creating a good case, they have to go back and re-interview every witness and review every they have to...
What?
They have to go back and review every witness, re-interview every person, review every new piece of evidence, every old one, every report, validate, re-verify, and try to disprove it until they can't. And then it becomes a fact in the case. Then you get to the next piece of evidence and yada, yada, yada. You got to do it all over again. Then you have to go into the details of the death, and it makes them that much closer to the victims. I mean, it's not uncommon for detectives to have pictures of their victims with them in their cars or their wallets and their desks or pinned to the cork boards to keep them focused on these victims and their families, that they rely so much on these detectives to bring them justice. They become very important to these officers. Then when perps have the nerve to even pretend that they're smarter than teams, these specially trained groups of professionals, to try to destroy the case against it, that's it. It becomes a point where they snap and they are done. And that's exactly what happened here whenever they decided not to go with the plea agreement. And the defense said, sorry guys, can't do it today. Well, yeah, okay, well now we're coming for you. Unfortunately for Joanna's family, only a limited number of the incidents from her case could be utilized in this stage of the trial. That Rodriguez, he contacted Joanna twice on the night of her death. Rodriguez had spent time browsing online for stories on both Summer and Joanna since her murders. He even downloaded some images of Joanna from the articles that he found. What the?
That's nuts. Especially, that's crazy. Okay, all right.
When Rosendo rescinded his plea bargain, along with it went the confession. Those details, they were all inadmissible. The law is very direct in this respect. His statement was not defined as voluntary because it was part of a plea agreement. Regardless of who backs out of the plea, it's still inadmissible. I mean, yay, Texas, great law. During the trial of, that might be a federal law, but I'll still blame Texas, whatever, you're hot. And I can't stand how hot it gets during the summer, so I'm already mad at them. So anyway.
Shut the fuck up. No one cares.
During the trial, Rodriguez's family testified for the defense, yay, describing that the Rosendo that they know and loved. His father, a prior criminal defense attorney himself, testified that the allegations that he was an aggressive and alcoholic father who instilled the dread in his son as a child, it was actually true. Rodriguez's sister and aunt, they also testified in support of Rodriguez on the stand. I mean, come on. There was even a point where Rodriguez's aunt recalled how at the age of 14, Rodriguez had said to them, I'm going to be the first Latino president of the United States. I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. Don't think that's going to work out for you. Yeah, that's not really looking likely, kiddo. And finally, when Rodriguez's mother told the jury that Rosendo has always been respectful and that he had his own 6-year-old son, Rosendo Rodriguez IV. I mean, bless his heart. That is not exactly a legacy to pass on in that name anyway. But this boy, Rosendo Tres, has only seen him what? How many times? 3, 4, 1, 2, 3? I mean, ridiculous. So yeah, describe him as caring father. He's only seen him 3 times in his 6-year-old life. As she left the stand, though, Rodriguez's mother passed out. That was the only time Rosendo ever showed any emotion, jumping up to his feet and screaming for her, but he was restrained by the bailiffs. He was so noble. No matter what anyone said or did, the jury still came back quickly with the verdict that we all know and love. Sorry, Ray Crone. Rosendo Rodriguez III was given the death penalty. You know how much I love that one. Fire up old Sparky again. I think that this is becoming a main theme in this one. He was given a number of appeals before the sentence was carried out, as it is customary in death penalty cases. Thus, he spent years on death row awaiting his sentencing. Rodriguez requested a stay of execution 1 month before his scheduled execution date. He cited that the alleged proof that the medical examiner may not have even done the autopsy following Summer's death. Now, this issue, it arose from a 2015 lawsuit in which the medical examiner was accused of leaving the examiner's office on a regular basis to run his own medical practice and delegating the examinations to senior forensic nurses. But, I mean, in certain cases, the doctor was accused of not even doing his own autopsies, which sucks. But according to that complaint, the case was eventually resolved for around $200,000. But when it came to this case, the Lubbock County District Attorney, Matt Powell, he said that there was absolutely no material in this lawsuit that could have been relevant to Rodriguez's case. So, what does that mean? Oh, wait, this was a stay of execution? Oh, Rodriguez, he was sentenced to death for a second time, and the execution date was set for March 27th, 2018. Rosendo Rodriguez's final appeal to the United States Supreme Court was dismissed minutes before his execution. And he was executed by lethal injection, which I think should be much harsher, on March 27th, 2018, his 38th birthday. Happy birthday, killer. When given the opportunity to say his final words, Rodriguez used a podium to quote 2 Timothy 4:7 from the Bible. I have fought the good fight. Well, how? What fight? Shut up. I have finished the race. I have maintained the faith. Well, good for you. The state may have my body, but they will never have my soul, Rodriguez added. I am ready to join my father, Warden. Strangely, he also urged people to boycott Texas businesses, claiming they're putting all this pressure on corporations or the death penalty, the only way to end the practice in the state. I mean, dude, shut up. Sit down. Die. Bye. Rodriguez was the 4th job well done in the state of Texas that year, and the 7th in the U.S. of that year, when he died at 6:46 p.m., 22 minutes after receiving the deadly dose of phenobarbital. Can we say it with me? Yay!
Great job.
I only wish that it had taken longer, and that I think that was way too nice of a way to send him to his maker. That's just my 2 cents. Well, that is it for this episode of Homicidal Tea. If you liked it, give it that old good like. But did you guys ever hear this case one before? I mean, I think I saw it on See No Evil, or maybe it was Dateline. I don't know. Not really sure. It's crazy because I have these random true crime facts that pop into my head. And this is one of those cases. I was like looking at chicken breast or something in the case at the store. And I will just have a thought pop into my head. What case was that with a guy in a suitcase and a girl went missing? I mean, totally random. And it's so weird how our facts like that seep into our brains. But anyway, until next time, don't
What?
So anyway, until next time, don't murder anyone. And if you do, just don't be so dumb. Well, no, you need to be dumb because you need to be caught and you need to be executed. So never mind. If you murder someone, I hope you leave your phone hanging out. And I hope you send selfies to your girlfriend. This guy was dumb. All right, I can't even. Bye.